Everybody ready to get weird?
Yeah.
There, that's what I like. Alright, so I'll start with who I am first. So, who the hell is this guy? Who is the Mantissa? My name is Midge. I'm a motion designer. That's my face, very, very big over here. And actually I'm a whole bunch of things. I work as a freelance motion designer and artist, and I combine a whole bunch of skills together to sort of do all the crazy work that I do. And first of all, I'm a 3D artist. I'm also a huge nerd, which helps, obviously, because you're at a computer all day. I'm very much a hardware enthusiast, but also an IT guy. I firmly believe that if you're freelancing, you've got to try and do as much as you can by yourself. And the reason for that is I'm also kind of a cheapskate. Anything I can fix myself or figure out myself with a cheap solution is awesome. If I don't have to pay other people to sort out my problems, I'm more in control, which is really nice. I'm also a teacher. I've taught all over the place. I really love teaching. I really love hanging out with students and helping them to find their eureka moments and really pushing their own limits as an artist and see who they become when they do their own stuff. And I'm also a huge movie buff, and you'll see that in just a minute if somebody can figure that one out. So, I make a lot of weird shit, basically. I come from quite a technical background, and in recent years I've always been obsessed with 3D, but now I'm actually sort of making it work somehow by using all that technical knowledge and just kind of going ham in 3D applications and having fun with it.
It's already...
I don't really... Yeah. If you're looking for meaning and stuff in all these artworks, then you're asking the wrong guy. There's some stuff that does come from a bit of personal influence with things that happen in my own life, but most of the time I just sit there and just noodle away until something cool comes out. Usually I'll find the first image in a series of images, because I like to work as a traditional artist sometimes where I use series of images and then sort of grab that one idea and see how far I can push it and see how many variations I can do on it before I just get really sick of it. For example, just to give you an idea, this is, obviously it's all 3D, but it's all one object. So you can basically make these 4 images from the same scene. I'm also efficient, which is my neat word for lazy, so there you go. And yeah, I like abusing things this looks like it would be a giant pain in the ass to model. I didn't model it, I used a hair system and just got really, really, really close with the camera and then just, I don't know, give it lights and shaders and all that crap and it just looked cool. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about 2 projects and then some of the tools that I use so you get an idea of how to do things. So the first one is Days. That is a project with me and my brothers. It's basically a party, and we're gonna try and do a bit of a birthday party at first, and now it's turned into a full-blown production, and I'm doing a whole bunch of visuals for them, and it's, yeah, like I said, if only I'd known what I was getting myself into, because this started out as a nice little fun project, and I've been working really hard to do some cool stuff. So I'm gonna show you a quick trailer first that we released a couple weeks ago, and then talk a little bit about the work that's involved. So it's just very simple. We didn't want to make a big reveal or anything. We wanted to keep it mysterious and sort of, as we ramp up to the project, release more and more information about it. I can't take credit for the visuals on that one. My brother who's sitting over there did those. I only did the music, so everybody look at him. He really doesn't like the attention. But yeah, it's cool because I have 2 brothers. One of them is also a motion designer, the other is a musician, so it's really fun to have 2 other people, especially they're my brothers, so we can stand each other to get creative and do stuff together. It's really nice. So basically, this project, what it's all about, we're just throwing a party and we're trying to figure out how we can do a very visually attractive party with the least amount of money. So it comes down to a combination of a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously one being deadline, the date is set, like I can't really move anything around, I have to make sure everything is finished by then. The quantity of the work, which is kind of crazy, I wanted to have a whole bunch of unique content. We have a couple of DJs and I wanted to have a whole bunch of visual loops and things to make sure that you don't really get bored, that you can just, I guess, enjoy the ride and have a lot of crazy visual things happening in the background. So I started calculating a little bit and I figured out like, hey, if I'm going to make VJ loops, let's say they're 20 seconds each, I can loop each one about 3 times because I make them all in perfect loops. So that's 1 minute, so if I do 60 of them, I have an hour, I guess, of unique content. Now, if you talk to any 3D artist, they'll tell you that trying to make an hour of content on your own in 3D is insanity. I have talked to a lot of people about it and they're like, what's wrong with you? Like, why are you trying to do this? Because usually, you know, everybody knows that triangle of, what is it, time, quality, and sanity, I believe is the third one? No. So, I'm trying to do this in a few months' time, while I'm also freelancing and doing other work. So, obviously, I don't want the quality to suffer either, because that would suck. You know, if people come in and they're just like, yeah, wow, great, you did the same thing 500 times, you know, very original. And obviously I'm on a budget as well, and the budget mainly for me is time right now, because I want to make sure that I can still pay my rent, but also have all this work done. So, step 1, when it comes to like deadline and quantity, like just let it go. Seriously, let it go. That's what I had to teach myself from the very beginning, because the first loop I did, it took about a day to make, right? So I started thinking, okay, I'm going to do 60 of these. I've got roughly 3 months, maybe 4 months. Okay, wait, so that's 60 days. That's 2 full months of work. And not a working week work, but like 7 days a week work. Wait, how am I going to pull this off? And that's where I learned this. Just stop thinking about it. There's really no point. So step 3 is be a rockstar motion designer. I'll get there someday, I'm sure, but what I'm trying to illustrate is that for me, what works for me at least, is just letting it completely go, trying to turn off my mind. And Daniel, who was before me, it was very interesting to see him thinking sort of a similar manner about it as well. I really try to just sit down when I'm doing these and just let it come out naturally. I'll show you an example of where I am right now a little bit later, but yeah, it's been very interesting. Like, you can't go in with a preconceived notion of, I'm going to make this, because if you don't, you get frustrated and it's going to take twice as long because you keep trying to hit that target, hit that target, hit that target, while at the same time, I've got to put it into context. Like, I'm making visuals for a party, so who is my target audience? Drunk people. Right? At the end of the day, that's it. Like, drunk people that are maybe even getting high and like trying to wiggle it to some music. So, you know, what am I trying to make? Well, stuff that will make people stare into the abyss. You know, drunk people just go, wow, that's really cool. So, with that in mind, it helped me to sort of relax and think, okay, it can be abstract, it can be weird, it doesn't have to be anything like super intricate, it doesn't have to have any special meaning, they're all just going to be drunk, it's fine. So, the whole thing starts with one idiot, that being me. Because obviously I was like, yeah, I'll do 60 loops, it'll be fine, yeah, and now I'm like, oh Jesus Christ, what did I get myself into? That one idiot has 2 computers. Anybody be able to figure out what my favorite movie is from the names of these 2 computers? There you go. Yeah, I'm a nerd. And between them, I've got 5 GPUs. So, I don't do stuff in game engines in real time, I just render everything on the GPU because it's like crazy fast, and if you have 5 of them, it's pretty fast. Your office is also an oven. Crazy. Like, I'm really happy that winter is coming, and that, I don't mean that as a Game of Thrones pun or anything. Everybody ready to get weird?
Yeah.
There, that's what I like. Alright, so I'll start with who I am first. So, who the hell is this guy? Who is the Mantissa? My name is Midge. I'm a motion designer. That's my face, very, very big over here. And actually I'm a whole bunch of things. I work as a freelance motion designer and artist, and I combine a whole bunch of skills together to sort of do all the crazy work that I do. And first of all, I'm a 3D artist. I'm also a huge nerd, which helps, obviously, because you're at a computer all day. I'm very much a hardware enthusiast, but also an IT guy. I firmly believe that if you're freelancing, you've got to try and do as much as you can by yourself. And the reason for that is I'm also kind of a cheapskate. Anything I can fix myself or figure out myself with a cheap solution is awesome. If I don't have to pay other people to sort out my problems, I'm more in control, which is really nice. I'm also a teacher. I've taught all over the place. I really love teaching. I really love hanging out with students and helping them to find their eureka moments and really pushing their own limits as an artist and see who they become when they do their own stuff. And I'm also a huge movie buff, and you'll see that in just a minute, so we can figure that one out. So, I make a lot of weird shit, basically. I come from quite a technical background, and in recent years I've always been obsessed with 3D, but now I'm actually sort of making it work somehow by using all that technical knowledge and just kind of going ham in 3D applications and having fun with it.
It's already...
I don't really... Yeah. If you're looking for meaning and stuff in all these artworks, then you're asking the wrong guy. There's some stuff that does come from a bit of personal influence with things that happen in my own life, but most of the time I just sit there and just noodle away until something cool comes out. Usually I'll find the first image in a series of images, because I like to work as a traditional artist sometimes where I use series of images and then sort of grab that one idea and see how far I can push it and see how many variations I can do on it before I just get really sick of it. For example, just to give you an idea, this is, obviously it's all 3D, but it's all one object. So you can basically make these 4 images from the same scene. I'm also efficient, which is my neat word for lazy, so there you go. And yeah, I like abusing things this looks like it would be a giant pain in the ass to model. I didn't model it, I used a hair system and just got really, really, really close with the camera and then just, I don't know, give it lights and shaders and all that crap and it just looked cool. So, I'm going to talk a little bit about 2 projects and then some of the tools that I use so you get an idea of how I do things. So the first one is Days. That is a project with me and my brothers. It's basically a party, and we're gonna try and do a bit of a birthday party at first, and now it's turned into a full-blown production, and I'm doing a whole bunch of visuals for them, and it's, yeah, like I said, if only I'd known what I was getting myself into, because this started out as a nice little fun project, and I've been working really hard to do some cool stuff. So I'm gonna show you a quick trailer first that we released a couple weeks ago, and then talk a little bit about the work that's involved. So it's just very simple. We didn't want to make a big reveal or anything. We wanted to keep it mysterious and sort of, as we ramp up to the project, release more and more information about it. I can't take credit for the visuals on that one. My brother who's sitting over there did those. I only did the music, so everybody look at him. He really doesn't like the attention. But yeah, it's cool because I have 2 brothers. One of them is also a motion designer, the other is a musician, so it's really fun to have 2 other people, especially they're my brothers, so we can stand each other to get creative and do stuff together. It's really nice. So basically, this project, what it's all about, we're just throwing a party and we're trying to figure out how we can do a very visually attractive party with the least amount of money. So it comes down to a combination of a whole bunch of stuff. Obviously, one being deadline. The date is set. I can't really move anything around. I have to make sure everything is finished by then. The quantity of the work, which is kind of crazy. I wanted to have a whole bunch of unique content. We have a couple of DJs, and I wanted to have a whole bunch of visual loops and things to make sure that you don't really get bored. That you can just, I guess, enjoy the ride and have a lot of crazy visual things happening in the background. So I started calculating a little bit and I figured out like, hey, if I'm gonna make VJ loops, let's say they're 20 seconds each, I can loop each one about 3 times because I make them all in perfect loops. So that's 1 minute, so if I do 60 of them, I have an hour, I guess, of unique content. Now, as well, like this one you'll see, I'll have a concept that I like and then I'll repeat it a couple of times and find some variations on it. Again, like the whole quantity-quality thing, it's not easy to make it work, but when it does and you start seeing progress and you start seeing all these things come together, it's actually really nice. And this one is one of the last ones I made. So I told you in the beginning that the first one took somewhere between 8 and 6 hours. This one I clocked because I actually recorded the whole thing for the presentation. I did it in 43 minutes and 22 seconds. So, if you want to talk about improving yourself as an artist and working efficiently, if you do things over and over again, you're going to get better at it. It's that simple. It's something I tell my students as well when they come into the room. They're not students, they're also artists. I've just been doing it longer than them, and I'm going to try to get all the knowledge that I have into their heads. That's it. I don't believe in hierarchies. Everybody's at the same level for me, and it's really cool to see students like feeling free in what they're creating and being really comfortable with how they're working with things and being able to talk to me like I'm a normal person and like, they call me dude, I don't care, I like that, it's fine, like I'm just a guy, I'm not some fucking god or anything. And it's something that frustrated me when I was in school, that a lot of people like, oh yeah, but you know, there are teachers and this and that. They're just people, they're smart people, and hopefully they're good teachers because that's really important, they're just people. So, you can see a little bit of the process, so I go back and forth between rendering and 3D a lot. Yeah, we're almost there. There you go, zooming in and out, doing all this crazy stuff, and then re-rendering it, I think it's done now. And yeah, obviously the final point, look at all the pretty colors, like I said, putting all this stuff together, it's really cool, like to look at your own work and kind of go, wow, that's actually pretty badass. Like, that doesn't happen a lot to me. I get like sick of my stuff really, really quickly. I can make something and then 2 weeks later look at it and be like, why did I put it on the internet? I'm such an idiot. But I think as an artist, if you're not willing to push yourself and get better, then no offense, but you better stop. Because I've seen so many people get burnt out, whether it's in the studio or as a freelancer, people that do the same thing all the time, that aren't willing to evolve, that aren't willing to put in the time to become a better artist, and they're usually the people that end up like in a movie on the cutting room floor, unfortunately. Because, you know, you're in it because you want to do this stuff, right? At least I am. That being said, you know, don't freak out about that kind of thing either. It's not worth it. What I want to talk about is the opening titles I did for the festival. I don't know, I'm sure most people have seen them, right? Yeah, no? I'm going to play them again anyway, just so people can get an idea and I can talk about them a little bit, so. So this is actually a really interesting project for me personally, because it's one of the first times I did everything. So music, visuals, editing, everything came together. Usually I'm just doing the visual aspect and then working together with musicians like my brother or other people to do the music part. But I've always enjoyed making music throughout my life, and I felt like this, you know, didn't suck, so I figured why not use it, put it all together and make something cool. And it's a really rewarding feeling being able to like make something like that and be able to say I literally did everything. it's fun, it's nice. But yeah, anyway, so how did this come about? The funny thing is, I met up with Daniel. He's actually from Antwerp. He's from the same town I am, which is one of the reasons I ended up speaking here. And we met up before. He was in Antwerp, so I figured, oh, let's go have a drink or whatever. And he emailed me, and I sat down, and I was thinking of doing something cool for him for the conference. But I wasn't sure, because I was also working on those damn loops, and already not having that much time to begin with. But I really felt like, it'd be fun to do something like this, it'd be nice. And I couldn't keep my big mouth shut. I said, yeah, I might actually be working on something. So yeah, kind of shot myself in the foot on that one, so now I was hooked, and now I had to do it. So I told him, okay, do you have any ideas for it? Because I can make anything, but maybe, you have something in mind. We sort of talked about it a little bit before, but not really touched on that heavily. And he's like, oh yeah, the logo's a triangle. I'm like, oh, okay, I saw that on the website, right? And he's like, no, but like, I love your stuff, it's really cool, I'm sure you'll make something cool. I'm like, oh, okay, that's it, okay, cool. Okay, the logo is a triangle. I guess I'm gonna use triangles on this one. Yeah. So, I had to get started. Now, I am a terrible 2D artist. I can't draw to save my life. I cheat because I use 3D, because I'm just a terrible 2D artist. So I usually go straight into 3D and try stuff out and see what works and what doesn't work. So this is something that I was experimenting with at first, and the triangle, and then, I don't know how visible it is, but like, you've got this wireframe running over the landscape that slowly ebbs away, and I wanted it to symbolize that how we're all artists and we're creating all these digital landscapes and ideas, and yeah, okay, no, I don't think that's gonna work at all. And that kind of brings me back to what I was saying earlier. If you overthink it, then it's just gonna be, for me anyway. So, I had a quick test render as well. I liked it, but I felt like I couldn't go far enough with it. I couldn't really push it into something that I would think is really cool or something like that. So, there was some first tests, and then it's back to the drawing board. There you go. And this is literally all the preparation I did for the entire project in 2D. Yeah, I cannot draw. And initially this was even a different idea where I was gonna grab the triangle, because I had those first two shots, and you'll see them again in just a second. And I figured I could go closer and closer, and then maybe all the materials would be made out of triangles as well. And then I had this crazy triangular landscape, and a whole bunch of other stuff. And, oh, wait, let's go back. And then eventually fly through this tunnel full of triangles and then end up with the first little thing. But I felt it didn't work well enough because somehow I had to put the triangle logo in there somewhere. And it ended up becoming what it is now. All this stuff is like everybody's name and all the shots that still needed to be rendered and that kind of thing. So I have this little book, I write stuff down, and I always have nowhere near enough space, and I always refuse to take 2 pages for a project, so it just becomes this jumbled mess. But yeah, so I set off and I started making stuff, and then this is one of the iterations, and this is something I wanted to touch on. So these 2 shots, these first 2 came about, and I was like, okay, I think I've got something here. This is going to look cool, but how am I going to push this further, and I'm going to make it look interesting. So I came up with the idea of it being sort of a shell where the logo was embedded in and it opening up. Here you can see this is just some viewport previews. So I always render out viewport previews and start editing immediately because I like to work really fast and look at the end result. This is a shot that didn't make it because frankly it looked like ass and I didn't like it, so I just threw it out and tried something else. Same with this one, I didn't like the way the particles moved, they're all weird and like dotty, and nope, didn't like it, so I'll move on. But what I'm trying to illustrate here, a lot of this is already rendered, and because I have like all these GPUs and I can render super fast and all this stuff, I can work with my end result in mind really, really easily. And I really like working this way. I remember when I was in school and I would hear people talk and they had this crazy computer, I'd be like, yeah, but this guy's rich and like he's full of shit anyway. But honestly, like I bought my 3 big GPUs in my workstation, all 3 of them were secondhand. So just pick stuff up. Especially now, with everything that's happening in the computer world, with all the currency mining and everything, there's going to be a lot of really cheap GPUs on the market. If you're doing 3D and you're using Blender, you can render on both NVIDIA and AMD now, so you can get some really cheap stuff and build your own little render farm. If you're still living at home, maybe let your parents know that the electricity bill might spike a little bit in the next couple of months, just a hint. But because I can work this quickly, you know, people tend to say stuff like, oh, an artist is only as good as his tools and this. I don't really believe in that, but I do know from experience that if you have tools that can work at the speed that you think, you're going to make really cool things, and you can do this really quickly. Because this whole project took me, I'd say roughly a working week of work, so 5 days to put the whole thing together. And again, that's because I could work on stuff, I render it out in the viewport, I edit it all together, I hit the render button, go to bed, 8 hours later, 2 out of 3 shots are rendered, I can start replacing them and looking at them. And you can see here, even still, I put a second version of the shot, it still wasn't working, so I went back and fixed it and do it again and again and again. So I work very, very iteratively. Like I said, have that end result in mind, be able to visualize it quickly, and then for me that works to go really, really fast. So, what is my message about all this stuff? Basically, mess around and have fun. You know, you've got nowadays all these tools, like whether it's Photoshop or a 3D application or a bunch of other stuff, like you can be creative in so many ways. Why limit yourself to one thing and be like, oh, this guy I really like uses Maya, so I'm just going to use Maya from now on. Why would you do that to yourself? There's really no point, you know. So I'm a really big fan of procedural design. So this image was created for a contest recently, and the brief for it was you have to start with a sphere and everything has to be one object. So this shows you really nicely how I work in Blender. There's these things called modifiers, and you can all do all kinds of stuff to your mesh. And I found out a really neat trick where I can use textures to take pieces of the mesh away and do all kinds of cool stuff. And I mean, I'm a big nerd, a big sci-fi nerd, so I like all this like techie stuff as well. And it was really interesting because I got a lot of nice responses as well. People were really into it, which is really nice. And it was funny because I've been working this way for a while now, and it felt like this challenge was almost custom made for me. It was really weird. And I ended up winning as well. There were a bunch of winners, and I was one of them. And it was really nice, really cool experience as well. So, like I said, you know, I like doing stuff procedurally. Why? You can always go back, and Daniel as well before me was talking about things like happy accidents. I have so many happy accidents. If I was an unlucky guy, I would be a really bad artist. I can tell you that right now. But I don't know, I just like the flexibility of it. I like playing around with stuff, and because I'm doing 3D and not games, I've got a lot more flexibility. So again, this is a stream I did for one of the images I submitted for the challenge. It will me spazzing out over here. And here you can see how I build stuff up and how it allows me to try different ideas really quickly. Now this stream was about, I don't know, I think an hour, maybe an hour and a half, the part that you're seeing that's compressed now. So, you know, if you look at how quickly I can try all these different things, get all these really weird shapes. Like I said, you know, I make weird shit, so it doesn't have to look normal or whatever. I can go really weird. And yeah, just let this play for a bit. You can see how I iterate, how I try stuff. And you know, for all the people that are in games, you're gonna look at these polygons and just be disgusted by the stuff that I'm doing. I really don't care. I really don't care. You know, as long as it renders and it doesn't glitch out, I'm good. Who gives a shit, you know? It's the end result that counts. Go, faster. So yeah, like I said, it's very iterative. I try all this different stuff. I get all these weird shapes, and for me it was interesting because it was the first time I streamed anything, so suddenly I had to deal with audience interaction and people asking me questions. So that's really fun to do as well. I think I might do more in the future. So finally found a shape that I liked here. Looked kind of weird. Yeah, like I said, I try not to overthink stuff. When I get sick of modeling, I'll just move into lighting and shading. You know, just get creative in a different part. Like, just keep the train going. Don't stop. Because the moment you stop and start like thinking about things and sitting there for half an hour staring at something going, yeah, what should I do with this? You know what you should do? You should go the fuck outside, okay? Go do something else, because you've been staring at it for too long, and it's not going to work that way. Or you just move into a different part of the process, which is what I do here with shading and lighting and composition. So I just mess around, have fun, that's it. And then I'll even try different angles, and you know, don't be too afraid to try stuff. There's an undo button in every single application you use. You know, just save a different version and just completely destroy it, redo it, go back a few steps. Anything that helps you to just move on and push whatever you're doing, it's fun. So here I tried a whole bunch of other stuff and I ended up going back because it just looked alright and I was happy with it. And it was like the 4th image I did for that challenge and I was totally done with it at that point. But a little bit of compositing and that's it. So, end result please. Come on. Look at me thinking and talking and I think it's hilarious seeing yourself on a stream like that. It's so confronting. This is when I realized I really needed a haircut before I came here. Okay, so that's the end result with all the application stuff around it. But yeah, I think an hour and a half, something like that. So it's cool because once you get into that rhythm of just working as quickly as you can bump out the craziest stuff and you'd be surprised by your own speed sometimes. So part of that is also breaking all the rules. Okay, this piece is, like I said, there's a few pieces in a series, like the second slide where the question mark in it is part of the series as well. 2 things about this. So the first thing is, I try to switch off my brain when I'm working and just let it come out, as I said before. And a few days after this, I realized that a couple of days before I made this, I'd gotten the news that one of my family members was diagnosed with a brain tumor, and then all of a sudden this came out, and I only made the link after I made it. I was like, oh, maybe that was my way of dealing with it. So what might seem like really inspired at the time can sometimes also be something that's just, you know, you're dealing with, or that's something in your head that you're subconsciously projecting on your work. And I like that idea, so I pushed it further, so now it has this sort of double meaning. But all of this stuff, like the way I cut this out, okay, who would go in and sculpt this? Just an idea, show of hands, there's 3D people in here. So most people would, yeah, Booleans, the one thing you're not supposed to do in 3D. Yeah, people always give me shit, and I'm like, well, it looks cool, doesn't it? So, who cares? I don't, yeah. Also, fuck the poly count. I'm not a game artist, haha. So this little dude is obviously this guy here, and this entire environment, I didn't sculpt, I didn't do anything of that sort. I use a technique called photogrammetry to take pictures of things and then bring them into an application, and they actually generate a 3D model with a texture for me, which is awesome. But the stuff, the poly count that comes out of it is just crazy, it's mind-blowing. Also, if this fits on my GPU and it renders, sorry, I'm not gonna retopologize it. I don't, you know, if the image is there, there's no point. So for me, I skip a lot of those steps, optimization steps a lot of the time. So this is, for example, that photogrammetry program I was telling you about. So this is a different piece of architecture. I took about 250 pictures of this. And the way you're supposed to take pictures for photogrammetry is you've got to make sure you have every angle, otherwise you're going to have a hole in your mesh or the texture's going to be really low res. So what ends up happening is that you're on the street taking about 250 pictures of the corner of a building. You look like a crazy person. If anybody's sitting there watching you, I can just see people's faces going, I don't know what this guy's on, but he's been taking pictures of that building for like the last 10 minutes. And it's funny, because like I'll even get people that come stand next to me, and I'll hear them say, because I've got headphones on, I'm like listening to a podcast or listening to music, and I'll hear them say like, I just want to see what this guy's doing. I think he's doing something really interesting. And I'm taking these really bland pictures of an image of a building. I'm standing like this and going, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. I move 10 centimeters. I go 1, 2, 3, and then I do different angles. Dude, I'm telling you, the looks that I've gotten, it is hilarious. That's why I listen to music, because if I could hear them talking, I'd probably be ashamed. So then you bring it in, and you see, first I generate this very little point cloud, and then you generate the dense point cloud. And this shit takes forever. Like, I'm really happy it also runs on GPUs, so I've got a little extra speed because of all the render power. But it's really cool, and you can see, I don't know if you can read it, it's like 42 million points. So it finds 42 million points in those 250 pictures that it can use to generate this model. So then, I think I click on something here and I fucked it up because I clicked on the wrong thing, so I'm just going to realize it now and then click on the next thing. So this is just the mesh with the vertex colors because it's a really, really dense mesh. And then this is what the mesh itself looks like. So you get a lot of detail for free. It's awesome. It's really nice. And then once I enable the texture, so I'm going to enable the wireframe so you can see the kind of mesh that you get from it. It's all triangles, it's a giant mess, but for me it works. I don't really, I'm not too bothered by it. I think this one in particular ended up being about 2 or 3, somewhere between 2 and 3 million polygons. Usually the stuff that I spit out from this application is about 2-3 million polygons in general. And then finally, I load in the texture. I've got a pretty wicked camera. It takes like up to about 8K in pictures. So, while that's really nice for texture detail, the data sets for these things are really annoying. Because if I take a raw picture that's compressed, it's about 45 megabytes per picture, multiplied by 250. Yeah, so if I go out and scan 3 buildings that day, with all the pictures having to be converted to PNGs to bring it into the application, I'm losing hundreds of gigabytes a day sometimes. So I really decull stuff and then get rid of all the pictures once I have the model. And then this texture is then baked. I think I baked it at 16K, so you get like crazy texture resolution. And you could go in, fix the whole mesh or retopologize it, and then rebake out the texture, like project it back onto the original mesh, and get assets that you can use. And the thing is, I really like this stuff. I'm not a modeler. I'm able to model and sculpt, but I don't do it enough to be quick at it, so I get really frustrated, so I always try to figure out interesting ways to skip this step. And this is one of my favorite ways, because I both get textures and models for free, and I get to look like a crazy person on the street. So, that's a double whammy right there. And yeah, so then I bring it in and do stuff with it. So, 3D software, right? When I was in college, I was using Cinema 4D on Mac. Then I got an internship at a studio towards the end of college, and then they were like, yeah, we use 3ds Max, so I was like, as a Mac user, I'm like, I should fucking use Windows. And then I got over myself, and 6 months later I was loving it. 3ds Max was awesome, Windows was awesome. I built my first PC, and it sort of went downhill from there. And then after I sort of finished up working in studios and was working more on my own, then suddenly Autodesk, mimicked Adobe, and everything became subscription and way too fucking expensive, and then Mac stopped being updated properly in my opinion, and I was like, I'm done with this crap. So I was like, I want to try other 3D software, because when you're committed to one and if you use it for a couple of years, if you go look on forums, the grass always seems greener on the other side. I'm sure a lot of you have noticed this if you're using one tool and you look at the other. Houdini is like that for me right now. I'm like, and then I open up Houdini, I noodle around it, and I'm like, yeah, Houdini is great, but it's also really fucking cumbersome to do simple things. So generally it's best to have a good combo of things. So I started trying everything. I tried Maya, I tried Cinema 4D again, I tried Modo, I even tried Lightwave. And then finally, after all that, I was like, I guess Max is still cool. And I was like, that's right, Blender. I forgot about Blender. I installed Blender, used it for 2 weeks, and realized I was paying way too much money for software. Because Blender did everything it needed to do for me, and it thought exactly the way I did. So I moved over to Blender, and eventually now I'm working on Linux as well, because it's a little bit faster in Linux, and I absolutely detest Windows 10 as well, but that's more of a personal preference. But what I'm trying to illustrate with this is you're going to move to different stuff in your career. Don't resist it. Just try it out. Especially if there's students here, try out every piece of software. You've got trial versions of everything. You might be working with one thing in school, but if you get home and you can get inspired because there's a piece of software that you really like and thinks just the way you do, why don't take advantage of it? There's nothing wrong with that. And nowadays, a lot of the 3D packages are pretty similar anyway. So moving from one to the other, yeah, you'll get pissed off that the viewport navigation is different, but other than that, most of the tools are sort of in the same place and have similar names. And I'm still a dirty Max guy because I changed my viewport controls to Max and Blender. Ooh, yeah, I shouldn't tell the Blender guys that. But that's it. With all that photogrammetry stuff, I use all kinds of crazy tools, and That's the thing I'm trying to get across. Like, don't limit your creativity because somebody told you that Maya was the best application on the planet. It doesn't matter what other people use. It matters what you use because, you know, you've got to find yourself in all those tools and make sure they fit you and fit the way you think. So this is a list of stuff that I use now. I've gone mostly open source because there's a whole philosophy there that really appeals to me. So and also, like I said, I used to use 3ds Max and a lot of the Adobe stuff. I really think their move to software subscription absolutely destroyed their applications and any innovation within them. But again, I'm a little hardcore on that kind of stuff, so that's obviously my personal preference. So I run everything on Linux. I use Blender to do 3D stuff, I use Kdenlive to edit, Nature to do post-production, GIMP instead of Photoshop, Inkscape instead of Illustrator, Raw Therapy instead of Lightroom, and then the two applications I actually paid for are Photoscan, it's Agisoft Photoscan as a full name, and Bitwig I make music with. And the reason I like these two is because I had to pay for them once. Not every freaking month. Once. And I own it. Jesus. So yeah, where are we at? 43 minutes. I thought I was going to get up an hour. Oh well, blasted through it a little bit. So yeah, thanks for listening to all my crazy ramblings. Here's all my stuff as well. I'm on the internet, obviously. On my website, it's more than just a website with my work. I run a blog, even though I don't update it that regularly, but I've also got tutorials and resources and all that kind of stuff. So if you want to learn some of the things that I do, yeah, you can find it over there. If you like the loops and things and you want to follow what I'm doing there, you can find me on Twitter or Instagram. I post them over there as well. And yes, that's 2 underscores because it was already taken. And and I'm on ArtStation, and that's my YouTube channel with all my tutorials as well. So that's it for me. But if you have any questions, now would be the time. Yeah?
Do you not do any post-production for your loops?
I do, but I do it all in Blender. I don't leave Blender. I use the composite agents. Nice. So that's one of the reasons I really like Blender, is because I don't have to leave it. I can do everything from start to finish. Especially for stills. I've even gone that far, like every single project you've seen here today, you know, normally the 3D process is you do everything in 3D, you render it out to like an EXR, you bring it in a post-production program. I don't do that anymore. I render everything out in PNGs because it's my final images, that's it. So I just have a PNG sequence and it does, like it just renders everything, it does the post-production, it saves the frame. It's awesome. And then the client's like, yeah, but it's the wrong color here. So yeah, obviously I watch out where I use it and where I don't, but I'd say at this point most of my work I do just straight out of Blender. I do all the compositing in there and skip that step entirely. I hate having to deal with hundreds of files and file sequences everywhere. It's just really annoying. And then, especially with the XRs, there's this thing in Blender, there's color management settings in Blender that are really nice, and if you render the EXRs, you lose those colors, so you have to recreate them in a separate program, but I'm really used to working in that color space now, so. But, yeah, I hope that answers your question somewhat. Anybody else? Yeah?
Where do you get inspiration for your loops, actually?
I don't. I know that's a very anti-answer, but I sit down and I start with like a sphere, I displace it, and maybe something sparks, maybe something doesn't, and I just push stuff around with those modifiers until something comes out. Every now and again, I'll like, you know, it's always when you're about to fall asleep, isn't it? You're lying there in bed, you're like, oh, getting nice and comfortable, you're like, ah yeah, sleep, I love sleep. And then as you're like almost there, your brain goes, hey, have you tried combining these two things in 3D? And I'm like, oh, for fuck's sake. So, and then I'm torn, like, do I get up and try this? Do I try and remember it in the morning? Because like, a lot of people are really organized and they have this book next to their bed and they write stuff. Yeah, I mean, I know, you know. I've got these 3 little things on my desk and that's it. I don't take them with me or anything. They're just there to help me out quickly. So, every now and again I'll have like a technique maybe. I think I get more inspiration from wanting to try a new technique rather than having like an image in my head of what I really want to create. I've never, like I said, I don't have a traditional art background, so I have I guess, a very good sense of 3D in my head, but like trying to get a final image for my brain is just really frustrating. Like I said, I'll have that spark and then just let it be its own thing, rather than trying to make something. Yeah, and that's the cool thing about doing this kind of stuff. Like, I don't have a briefing. You know, it just has to look cool to drunk people. Like I said, there's really no other prerequisites, which is really nice. Yeah. So, anybody else? Yeah.
At what point do you stop fiddling with your work?
What do you mean by fiddling exactly?
Like, at what point do you feel like you're satisfied?
Sorry?
At what point do you feel like you're satisfied and you stop working on it?
I guess when I get sick of it. No, usually I'll just reach a point when I've gone back and forth to rendering something and recompositing it. Usually after a couple of times, I get sort of happy with the way things look, the way all the lighting comes together and the composition comes together. It's never really an exact measure of it has to have this, this, and this, because I also try to avoid using the same techniques over and over and over and over again to like not get into that trap. But I don't know, it just clicks. I know that's not really a very helpful answer. I'm like the worst artist when it comes to this stuff. Like when I'm trying to talk to people, they're like, "Oh yeah, what's your method? What's this?" I just sit there and doodle. That's it. You know, I like to work at night, so there's no distractions. And usually it's like, okay, I'm really tired now, and I'm really happy with the way it's looking, and then I'll go to bed. And I also try not to dwell on it too much. So I think that might be a better answer. It's done when it's done. I rarely revisit stuff. I put things on the internet really quickly, so I don't try to go back and change things. What's done is done. So what? Like, I can even tell you a more extreme example is I was having a conversation once with someone about having your house burned down, right? That would suck. I mean, obviously, I would agree with them as well. To me, if my house burned down and I lost all my data, it would be liberating. Because I would be forced to reinvent myself. I'd be forced to push myself further and to prove myself again and show that, yeah, I'm not relying on these old tricks that I have in my hard drive that I can reuse. I can make new creative stuff every day. So, for me, that's when it's enough. When I'm like, done with this, it looks cool, I'm not going to second guess it, I'm going to move on. So, was that an answer? I don't know. Alright, anybody else? Sure.
I would love to know if you used other renderers in the past.
Oh yeah,
and
sure.
how they relate to cycles. I mean.
Yeah, so when I first started as a professional, I used Mental Ray because the studio me and Mantissa were working at were cheapskates and they didn't want to buy V-Ray. And I found this course by Zap Anderson, Master Zap. He's like the dude that wrote stuff in Mental Ray, and he had this crazy course where he basically explained how a render engine worked. Now, I've always been a super technical person, and I love that stuff. Like, I really love to get down and dirty with the technical things, and because I learned it that way, I can use any single one now, because I understand how the process internally works. Cycles is awesome. Like any other renderer, it has its quirks, but if you look at the projects that the Blender Animation Studio is doing with it, it can definitely hold its own to any other renderer at this point. And the thing that I like about it the most is that not only does it literally render on anything now, so it doesn't matter what GPU you have, it doesn't matter what CPU you have, they have support for everything, and I don't know if they're the first people to do it, but I think so, which I think is very commendable for them. The thing I like about it the most is, since the recent version, you've got a sort of an Uber shader built in the same way you would have in V-Ray or Octane or other renderers, but for the longest time you had to build your own shaders, but that's still in there, so you can build your own shader from scratch and take out all the unnecessary stuff and really focus on things. And that's what I like about it the most, and it's all node-based and stuff, I love nodes. But yeah, it's, I think, like if you're going to compare it to something like V-Ray, obviously V-Ray has been around for a long time. It's been used in so many movies. They get all this feedback from all these giant studios, and the Blender guys get feedback from people like me that are trying to abuse it for the weirdest things. And they're like, yeah, you know, of course you've got fireflies because your mesh is all messed up, and you're doing this here, and you're putting that shader there. What are you even trying to do? I'm like, I'm trying to make you UI, man. And but yeah, its flexibility is both its strong point and a little bit sometimes it can be a little bit slower than the main ones, but like I said, it's awesome. And you've got Cycles 4D for cinema now, and the cool thing is a lot of their work seems to be coming back as well to the main Cycles core. And there's even a guy that's been porting it to Max, so you can try it for free and try it in Max if you're more proficient in other applications. So it definitely, it's up there. You know, and it's free. So there's literally no excuse to not try it. That's the thing.
So there will be one last question.
Yeah, go for it.
Like how would Blender be usable with applications like Unreal or?
Oh, it's actually, they've been working really hard in the last year to make it more compatible with everything else. I find that it works really well. It's got Alembic support, so you can export, import Alembic stuff, so you can definitely move between other applications. Tom Roosendaal, the founder of Blender's own words, it can now work with all that Autodesk crap. Not that I hate Autodesk, but no, it's definitely gotten a lot better. You've got support for FBX, but only older versions of FBX, because from a certain point, Autodesk closed the source code for it, so obviously in Blender they can't implement it. You've got support for OBJ, Collada. There's a lot of great tools to go from Blender to game engines, whether it be Unity or UE4. And with the new Blender coming up, I think it's next year, probably the end of next year, they've got a really nice real-time viewport with PVR and everything built in. So it's going to be even easier to move your assets from one to the other because you can preview it really well. It's honestly, it's an amazing tool because like a lot of other people, actually I'll explain it a different way. Blender has a really interesting effect as an artist because if I tell people first that I use Blender, they're usually not interested in what I'm making. They're like, oh yeah, you must be an amateur, right? If I show them my work first and then say, oh, and I do it in Blender, they're like, oh, this guy's like a magician or something. It's just another 3D application, but it's really smart in the way that it's built, which makes the learning curve maybe a little steeper than some applications, but once you get it, it's crazy how good it is. Like, it's really amazing. And it's free, and when I click the Blender icon, it starts literally instantly. Coming from Max, it's really nice, because you have an idea and you don't have to sit around and wait for the damn application to start. But yeah, it's definitely, it's very production tested, because a lot of people think that, you know, because it's open source that it won't hold up in big productions, but actually they make movies with it all the time, and all of their feedback is coming from people sitting next to developers making films with it. So it's definitely very, very optimized and cool application. All right. No more questions? Sure?
How do you kill fireflies?
How do I kill fireflies? In Cycles? Okay, so turn off reflective caustics if they're giving you issues. Clamp stuff down, but only the indirect stuff. Don't clamp the direct light if you don't need to. And if you want, talk to me after my talk and I'll show you some of the render settings that I use to minimize them. So, okay. That's it. I'm done, yes. All right, thank you very much, everybody.